All right, dude, let's do this.
All right, Hawk fans, we are back. The weekly Softy Hawkblogger podcast for those out there that have really nothing to do on their afternoon lunch hour. This will give you a chance to maybe get away and talk some Seahawks football. And Brian, I was just on with a radio station in Arizona talking about this matchup with the Cardinals on Sunday. And for some reason, the guy asked me if I was sober. And I said, no, I have not been sober one day of my life since that last Super Bowl in their stadium in 2015, February of 2015. But I don't know, man. After the way that game against the Saints went last week, I think all of us could have used a drink. That was just a kind of total, complete meltdown, really, on every single facet of the football team last week. How about we start off with some thoughts on what you saw and what I saw last Sunday against the Saints?
Yeah, it was as aggravating of a loss as the Seahawks have had in the Pete Carroll era, and they've had plenty. And what was really crazy to me is how divisive it was among Seahawks fans. I mean, people were fighting like cats and dogs about who to blame for. There's people that are like, this was the coaches lost this game. This is why Pete Carroll's, terrible for this team. There were people that were like, no, the players lost this game. They made stupid plays. And I don't know. It was just what I saw was a total, complete meltdown from pretty much every facet. Russell played a really good game, but even he missed a couple of plays that like that fourth down touchdown should have been a pretty straightforward play. He missed it. So, like, everybody did not do their absolute best in that game. We got 16 missed tackles. You've got a crappy punt from Michael Dixon. You've got Chris Carson fumbling again. You've got, Al Woods not knowing how to line up on a field goal. I mean, these are ridiculous mistakes that cost you 21 points. Just those mistakes. And if they don't make one of those, or if they make one of those tackles on Kamara and keep him out of the end zone and instead of letting him run around,
right,
they probably still win that game. And so it's super aggravating. And, it's going to cost them. They're going to really wish they had that game back.
Well, I'll tell you what, you look at the last three games, and I don't think anybody would have turned down 2-1. I think we would have been okay with 2-1. It's the way that we lost that game, number one, that, as you said, bothers you. And then number two, if you want to lose a game, it's not the Saint game. It was the Pittsburgh game, because that's an out-of-conference game. Winning the conference games are obviously gigantic. So that frustrates me. I will say this, though, and this is not a criticism of you at all, because a lot of other people do this, and maybe you're right, and maybe I'm wrong, Brian. But for those that say, well, if this play would have gone that way or that play would have gone that way, look at the final score. They lost by 6. They would have won. That's assuming everything else would have gone exactly the way the game went anyway, like after Carson's fumble, or after not going for 2, or after not calling timeout at the end of the first half. We're assuming everything else goes exactly the same way like it did. And I can't say that, because look, if that game's closer in the fourth quarter or the third quarter than it really was, maybe the Saints are dialing up a different offense. Maybe they're dialing up a different defense if the game is in a different type of situation. So I totally get it. And I think that's the thing that bugs me, is that you didn't get beat by Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, all week long, I was asked by, Dick Fain, my partner, what are you more nervous about, the UW-BYU game or the Seahawks-Saint game? And I said UW-BYU for sure. Number one, they're on the road. And number two, the Seahawks are playing a backup damn quarterback, for God's sakes. So let's not make this complicated. They are facing a backup, and they did not get beat by Teddy Bridgewater. They did not lose because of Teddy Bridgewater. They lost because of special teams. They lost because of Chris Carson fumbling. They lost because their defense could not tackle Alvin Kamara, which was frustrating all damn day long. Normally, guys that are, sure-handed tacklers like Michael Kendricks could not tackle Alvin Kamara. And I was frustrated too, Brian, by the way, with what Pete Carroll said after the game about Kamara, that they didn't really know who he was. I was like, what are you talking about? The guy's been in the NFL for, 30-plus games. He was a star last year. He was a star 2 years ago. What do you mean you don't know who this guy was? I get never having played him before. I certainly understand that aspect, and I'm okay with that. But don't tell me that you didn't know who the guy was when he was already a star before the year even began.
No, that he had a very cringeworthy day overall. I mean, as good of a day as he had in Pittsburgh, where you could argue his coaching decisions really led to winning that game.
Yep.
There were definitely a bunch of things he did in this game that were costly to the team. And in his post-game comments, he said a lot of stupid stuff. And the stuff he said that he wished he could do over again were the things he actually had done the right way. So, you know, it was not a great day for Pete Carroll for sure. And I was not saying or meaning to imply that, you know, hey, if one play happened different. But look, you know, if these are really simple things. If Michael Dixon doesn't kick the worst punt of his career, I mean, that was just a horrible punt. And if Al Woods lines up correctly and we get a missed field goal there, that's 14 points. I mean, that's,
I get it. Yeah.
You know, or the Chris Carson thing, like, you know, the game was 7-7 at that point, if I'm not wrong. And
correct.
And then all of a sudden, and he just ran 21 yards. You got to, like, you're onto something. Like, these are massive plays, and it felt like the Seahawks, we're used to the Seahawks playing like idiots, playing it closer than it should, and then they pull it out at the end. And they just dug such a massive hole this time, they couldn't do it.
Well, and look, I get it. It just made it more difficult for themselves for sure. And I think you're right, because we just got done talking about Bridgewater and the offense. But I thought overall the defense was pretty damn good in that game, outside of some tackling issues for sure. I mean, halftime, the Saints have, 105 yards of offense or 115 yards of offense. I saw where Bridgewater averaged about 2 yards of air time during each throw. He averaged about 6.5 yards attempt. So Teddy Bridgewater was what we thought he was going to be. Not a very good quarterback, not very dynamic. And the Seahawks allowed them to be in that football game with those mistakes. So, I mean, look, I'm actually not as concerned moving forward, because I think all those things are fixable, right? The coaching decisions are fixable. Lining up properly on a field goal is fixable. Not fumbling the football is fixable. Having a punter give you a better boot to put yourself in better position to field a kick is fixable. I did not think the Seahawks were beaten on Sunday because the Saints were more talented than they were. I did not think they were beaten because they were out-hustled, out-physicaled. I just thought they had a bad day brain-wise, right? Brain fart-wise. It was a horrible day for them. So I'm not as concerned moving forward. I'm more pissed about the loss on Sunday because they gave it away, but I'm still actually pretty okay moving forward now with this football team, especially when you consider, Brian, that, hey, you get Jaron Reed back in three games. You know, hopefully Penny's going to be on the mend and be a part of this offense starting on Sunday. And I actually applaud Pete Carroll for sticking with Chris Carson, right? Because he's not stupid. He knows Chris Carson is the best running back they have on the football team. And if he jumped off his wagon, then Carson may fall apart mentally. So that only goes so far. Clearly, if he starts fumbling again this weekend against Arizona, then you got to look at the time, the score, how impactful were those fumbles. But I actually believe that Pete Carroll's doing the right thing for now by sticking with Chris Carson.
I agree with you on that. Well, let me say this. I understand why he's doing it, and I can support it. I also would have been supportive if Rashad Penny was healthy and he was like, you know what? We're going to give Penny a chance at the top spot. Carson, we're still believing him. He's gonna still split reps, but we're going to help him regain his confidence. I would have supported that too. So, like, I don't think he had to, if he had benched him, that would have been the wrong thing. But, you know, I wouldn't be against Rashad Penny getting more reps as part of it.
Yep.
But back to your original point, I mean, yeah, look, Softy, is if I had told you before the game that Russell was going to throw for 400 yards, not be sacked a single time, be hit twice, and, you know, Bobby Wagner was going to have 18 tackles, you know, I think you would have probably felt pretty good, and that the Saints would have 265 yards of offense. I think you would have felt pretty good.
Really good.
And
really
so
good. Totally.
It's just a shame. It's a really bitter pill to swallow. We've had to swallow them before, and you got to move on. And look, this week in Arizona, we're going to know a lot more about this team over the next 7 days. They have 2 games in the next 7 days against NFC West opponents. And, you know, they have got to win this game in Arizona. And ideally, they got to win this pretty convincingly. And then, you know, they got the Rams coming to Seattle not soon after that. So this is a chance to really forget that Saints game. If they can win both of these games, I think, you know, the Saints game will be in the rearview mirror.
Well, there's concerns about the game Sunday for sure. I mean, I'm not as freaked out about Kyler Murray as I am other areas of the Cardinal football team. I mean, Chandler Jones has already got 3 sacks in the first 3 games of the year. And if I'm the Cardinals, I'm going right after Effetti with Chandler Jones on every passing play, right after his ass until he shows he can stop him. So that's a concern. How much help does Jermaine Effetti need in this game on Sunday against Chandler Jones is certainly one of them. And I think, I mean, look, DK Metcalf is kind of showing what he is so far. He's a deep threat target, and that's really it. I mean, guy's got 19 targets and 9 catches, for God's sakes, because the percentages aren't as high when you're going downfield. What is he averaging? About 24 yards a catch, for crying out loud, in the first 3 games of the year. So I'd like to see him get maybe a little more versatile starting with this game on Sunday. But I also think, if there are concerns about Kyler Murray, it's like 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 passing downs. Don't let that pocket break down and let that little midget take off. I mean, this guy makes Russell Wilson look like Bill Walton, for God's sakes. He is little. He is a really, really small guy. I mean, I've watched him play on tape and on TV, and he looks like a little kid out there, like he's wearing a Halloween costume. Brian, it's crazy how small this kid is. So when you lose track of a guy like that behind the offensive line, and you let him get the edge, there's all this talk about Ansah and Clowney coming off the edge as pass rushers. I'm more concerned about those guys as run defenders in this game on Sunday.
Yeah, it's Murray is legit. I mean, he is a dynamic athlete. He's got a good arm. I think his accuracy is pretty good. He's a gamer, and so I think he's going to be good for a long time. I do think he's dangerous. They're an 0-2 team, with the tie. They're coming back home. I think we're going to get as good of a swing as they can give. I don't think they're a very good team. Yeah. And look, the Seahawks have to take whatever they give and dole out twice as much. I mean, there's no excuses. Honestly, before the Saints game, I was pretty sure they were going to win a close one at the Saints and they were going to lose this game in Arizona, because that's the kind of game the Seahawks drop on the road.
Yeah.
But, they got to win it now. And I'm hopeful that they will.
No, I think they will. I think they will win it. And I think you'll see what you always see in Arizona, which is a boatload of Seahawks fans that travel down there for that game. And I just mentioned I was talking to, some buddies of mine in Arizona. And if I were them, that would piss me off, man. I mean, all those Seahawks fans that show up down there, it's like when the Blue Jays come to T-Mobile Park to face the Mariners. I mean, there's a boatload of Blue Jay fans. It drives me freaking crazy. If I'm a Cardinal fan, and I look up and I see all those Seahawks fans in the upper deck, that would absolutely drive me nuts. So we'll see this Sunday, but I'm with you. This is a must-win, man, coming off that loss to the Saints on Sunday. So let's get a win Sunday and do this again next week. All right, pal?
All right, sounds good, Softy. Thank you, and thanks for folks for tuning in. If you haven't already, join up over at patreon.com/Hawkblogger and subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify. Great stuff coming, and thank you, Softy. Have a good one.
All right, buddy. We'll see you guys, and Hawk fans, good stuff.